Hi, everybody. My name is Bryan, and I produce the Strat conference on product design, strategy, and innovation. And we have also AI product design boot camps that are lined up. Today, my guest AI expert is Jamie Munger, strategy director at Smart Design. Hi, Jamie. Welcome to the Stratosphere.
Hi, thanks for having me, Paul. Wonderful to be here.
Well, I want to talk to you about some frameworks for AI product design. But before we do that, can you tell us a little bit about your path into this role that you're in right now?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Um, so like you mentioned, I am a strategy director at Smart Design. So that means I kind of lead the team who are expert in understanding people that we are designing for, and being able to translate deep insights about them, their lives, their needs, their unmet needs into very actionable strategy from a design perspective, a technology perspective, and a business perspective. So I work for Smart Design. Smart Design is a human-centered design and innovation consultancy based in Brooklyn, New York. You can see our studio behind me in the Brooklyn Navy Yards. We are about 70 people strong and have been around for a little over 40 years. So I think it's a pretty well-known firm for those of you who've kind of followed the history of human-centered design and design strategy. If you're a film buff, you've seen Smart Design featured in Objectified. Um, and I think the firm goes back quite a ways and established some of the kind of foundational ways of thinking about design that many of us now take for granted, like the value of user research, the value of using prototypes as research, so using prototypes to learn, types of research that are kind of more creative or generative. Um, our design has established a lot of thinking around universal design and accessibility. So those are just kind of like a few things that art design is known for. We work in a lot of sectors. So technology sector, of course, that's what we're here to talk about today, but also health, wellness, financial services, consumer packaged goods. There's many other sectors that we work in. And our team here has folks who are expert in industrial design, visual design, interaction design, engineering, technology, and then user research and strategy. That's my team. So I think one of the things that's kind of unique about Smart is that we really do bridge the sort of strategic upfront, the whole what should we do, who's it for, what's the value. We merge that with the design and implementation aspect, which is like, well, how do we actually build it and how do we build it at scale? So no matter the undertaking, I think we do have a point of view on the approach. Like we really believe in starting with a deep understanding of the who we're designing for and really using those insights to define the what, the why, and the how. Um, and I think, while we believe strongly that this is how to innovate and how to design things that people value, I should say that we're also like continuously adapting like how exactly we do it. Like we're really not sticklers. We're always bringing in new methods, new tools. We use some AI ourselves in our practice. We try to stay flexible because the industries that we work in are continuously evolving.
Absolutely.
Um, I can say a little bit about me personally and my pathway into AI specifically. So I have a twisty turny trajectory, I'd say, that brought me here. I started my career in social science and public health, actually. I did a hard pivot into design and I worked in apparel design. I worked for outdoor and athletic companies designing items that probably many of you have, the things that keep you warm and dry, some cases actually keep you alive. I did a pivot again into the design research and strategy realm because I just really felt myself interested in not just the what to design, but the why and the for who. And I really fell in love with some specific research methodologies, ethnographic research, and like generative creative co-design research. I practiced those in depth for several years. I've always been interested in those topics and those questions that don't really have easy answers, and you can't really put out a survey or do something like that to get the insights that you really need to know in order to know what to do. Um, and I think a thing that I've loved a lot about my career in design strategy is that it's not category specific. So the past 15 years or so that I've been doing this, for example, I've worked for different companies around the topic of future of work. Topic that comes up a lot, the sort of intersection of productivity and creativity and communication, et cetera. 10 years ago, what this meant was really thinking about like physical spaces, right? Like this is when the open office is a very new concept, and the design strategy was focused on how to think about what are the activities that people are doing, what are the zones that they need, and how does the space and the furniture and the like arrangements kind of come together to facilitate those things. And then the future of work was more focused on software and like what are really people's workflows and what tools do they need. And now it's the age of AI, which for productivity and other purposes can be much more like having an assistant or a collaborator. And it's more like designing a relationship or a work session or a conversation. Um, so maybe that's a good segue actually to my experience working on AI. In case it's not obvious, I am not a data scientist. I am not an engineer, and yet I have found myself working almost exclusively in AI, generative AI, specifically for the past, I guess, almost 3 years. I was trying to quickly do the math, but I think LLMs first became publicly available around 3 years ago, and you probably remember they were met with sort of equal parts awe and fear. People were excited and they were also quite concerned. And right away, clients that we work with in the technology sector were asking us to help them really get a foundational understanding of the benefits and the concerns and helping them carve out a strategy for what to do and what to like invest their resources in. Um, with working in AI over the past couple of years, I think because it's so powerful, because it can do so many things from a strategy standpoint, it's just as important to define like what not to do as what to do. And in the early days of AI, so many years ago, 3 years ago, we were looking at some of those jobs and areas that were experiencing like the biggest disruptions right away and like really digging into what is good AI and what is bad AI. After that, I started looking more at, I'd say the range of modalities. So when people in tech talk about AI having different modalities, what they generally mean is sort of like the different input and output methods. So you can use text to get text. You can use voice to get text. You can use text to get images. You can use images to get images now in some cases. Video is another one, another modality that's coming online. These are all different modalities. So um, I've been working on modalities that are like a little bit more on the visual side, which if you've tried them, they can be pretty clunky. And we've started really digging into those sort of human AI interaction paradigms. Um, if you've tried it, you know that the word using words to describe what you want for an image is not the best way to get the image that you want. So we've been doing work on like what are new kinds of interfaces and interactions that feel more intuitive when you're working with non-text modalities. And then an important dimension specifically about images, I think, is that this is an area where AI's flaws are very heightened. These images can be very biased, they can be very stereotypical, they can be inaccurate, they're quite user-centric, all things that I'm sure you've noticed if you've tried using these tools. So a big part of figuring out the interactions, like giving users ways to identify these flaws and also correct them. And then most recently with AI, um, we've been working about um, how it how the experiences are when it's embedded into different kinds of like smart appliances or accessories like a wearable, for example. So here, AI is not really the main attraction. It's not the full experience, but it is something helpful that kind of pops up here and there. But popping up can be helpful and it can be creepy. Um, so this work is a lot about figuring out like what is the right way, what are the right ways for AI to pop up, what are the kinds of reassurances or guardrails or options that people need so that AI, when it's embedded in another experience, does feel helpful and it doesn't feel distracting or unhelpful or at worst.
Outstanding. Well, thanks for that introduction. I appreciate that. There's some folks who've joined us today, and they are facing different situations. Some of them are wanting to just check out AI and kind of start getting prepared for it. Others are being asked to plug Gen AI into everything that they do, basically. And then still others are working on native AI applications. So not everybody has the same background. As you started getting into the AI realm from kind of more of a traditional ethnographic user researcher role, what were some of the early challenges that you faced, or what were some of the early surprises that you encountered as you began to get into it from an AI native standpoint, not just the using the LLMs, but actually starting to create apps yourself?
Um, I think one of the things that was challenging initially is because the technology is so new and moving so fast that if you're trying to identify opportunities beyond what's available on the market today, people have a really hard time wrapping their heads around what the future might involve. Like we're already in the future, right? So the fact that there's a way beyond this uh, could be really hard for them to wrap their heads around. And so, a lot of what we do is like, well, what are your unmet needs? Like how are these products like uh not serving you in the ways that would be most impactful to you? And what else could we do, or what could we do differently, or what could we improve on? Um but people were just starting to use them, and so they didn't have enough A experience, or B um and nor should they have this like understanding of what the technology is capable of beyond what it's doing right now, uh that they could that we could, maybe what I'm trying to say is we had to develop kind of some different ways in as researchers, um to help get a little bit more at the future state. A lot
Right.
of that was done through like bringing things into the research that represented the future state. So relying less on the user uh, to generate ideas or tell us about what they needed that they weren't getting, and more about kind of like helping them envision what the future might entail and get them to react from there.
One of the things that as we migrate from traditional product design into AI product design, um, I'm trying to find the points where designers can have an impact other than just sort of decoration and ease of use, which I think everybody's going to give us those pieces. But I think data scientists and engineers sometimes find it hard to value what designers bring to the table. But you just mentioned something very important that I think that researchers, design researchers and designers, product team members do often, and that is visualize a future of something that's not existing right now. And so it
Yeah.
sounds like that might be one angle that the people on the call are able to demonstrate back to the people who kind of own AI right now and say, what, we can help you ideate and to flesh out use cases that are, really valuable for AI to contribute to. Have you had that experience?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. This is like what this actually is one of like the big frameworks that I've been working on. I'm still kind of working out the kinks on it. But um, yeah, I think one of the biggest untapped opportunities for design is to impact the technology roadmap and like really influence what technical capabilities for AI are being developed in these companies. And any of you work for tech companies, you know this, like the biggest focus and investment is like kind of on like the scientific aspect, right? Like what building capabilities for what the technology is, and then the like who and the what can come after the fact. And what I notice is that there are really amazing tech capabilities that are being developed, AI capabilities, but then the product teams struggle to figure out how to leverage it. Right? They're like, oh, okay, the AI can do all these things, but like what exactly are the product opportunities that would be meaningful to our users? And I think we all we all want to avoid being accused of building technology for technology's sake, or building something gimmicky, or building something that's focused on solving problems that no one has. Or I think the new one with AI is that building something where the AI just goes too far and trespasses into areas of life where it's really not wanted. So we've been experimenting at Smart Design using using our design approach to kind of shape and influence what goes on the tech roadmap, and helping like kind of make the case for what tech should be explored further, even though it doesn't exist today. And so the way that we've been approaching it is like you have to start with a pretty defined problem space. Frankly, you have to be kind of narrow on purpose. So I can't share the details of the project I've worked on, but I can like share kind of like adjacent ones. So an example would be, okay, we're thinking about elementary schools and we're thinking about the soft skill teamwork, right? Like how do we help elementary school age kids learn and practice teamwork? So like any design process, we would start with like, okay, who are the teachers? Who are the kids? Who are their parents around this topic of teamwork? What are the needs that they have that are unmet by solutions today? What would be a huge unlock if it was solved? And then that's the foundational part of any design process, right? It's like you figure out who you're designing for and what value you can deliver to them. And then we would actually ideate, as you said, right? Envision a solution with AI, going through a full design process of broad ideation, prioritization, prototyping at low fidelity, getting feedback, etc. But like taking it to like a pretty high fidelity, and like being really specific about what the AI is doing and how it's doing it. And you don't need to be a data scientist to do this. You're just like really thinking about the system. So like, what are the inputs? How does the intelligence actually work? What would it need to be trained on in order for it to work? How would it need to be adjusted over time as it learns about the students or the teachers? Like, what are the interactions? What are the outputs that it's giving the kids and the teachers and their parents? And how could it go wrong? And how could it backfire? And how are the outputs being used? And what systems do they need to integrate with? And what are the success metrics that the PM would be so focused on? And what would be like the policies that would influence the way it would be allowed to operate? So like you go into a fair amount of detail, but it's a really good thought exercise. And what you get out of it is like a pretty crisp outline for what the AI capabilities are that exist and will naturally evolve to be able to make this experience come to light, and what are the ones that need investment. And then similarly, because AI and the technology development and policy development go hand in hand, I think you also start to define, well, here's like the policies that exist. And here's the ones where we would need to define the policies prior to launch. Interactions, right? Here's the interaction paradigms that exist. And then here's new ones that we would need to get our users to understand in order for the experience to exist. So you come out with like a really crisp brief for the tech roadmap, the product roadmap, and the policy roadmap. And I think this getting really specific helps you see like where the tech would naturally go, where there's investment needed, and then, where there's guardrails needed for the future. So we've been using a process like this to help our clients kind of make the case internally to their own teams to get funding for specific tech investments. And then I think one thing that helps with the funding aspect is to kind of show scale potential. So it's like, oh, we really demonstrate this future vision using using design skills within this one narrow area, but then then you define the tech capabilities needed, and then you can show, you know, 8 other sectors or product areas where that same tech would have value, and that always helps the scale potential when you're looking to make a case for investment.
But if you're evaluating these opportunities, it sounds like there are some questions in the framework that you ask yourself, and then based on the answer to those questions, they either kind of move up the chain or down the chain. But since it's all future, how do you evaluate the impact to the business of the different ideas? What's the scale? Is it a 2 by 2 matrix, or is it a kind of effort versus expense, or what are some of the
Yeah.
parameters you use to make those kind of decisions?
I mean, my understanding is like you choose where to invest. It's more of a scale. I think it's more of a scale play. I think it's like it's a heavy spend, right, to develop a new tech capability, and it's also pretty long timeline, or it can be depending what the capability is. So we can make the case to do it, A, if it feels really aligned with what the company wants to stand for. B, if we feel like we're going to be able to use that capability a lot in a lot of different parts of our product or types of products. And C, if it's going to differentiate us, because there's so much AI now. Much of it's not that different from one another. So is there something like a real value unlock that we can deliver if we develop this capability? Um, I had a third one or fourth one, differentiating. I forgot it. Maybe I'll remember it in a minute.
Yeah, I wonder the impetus for all this frenzy in a news every day in the news was the release of ChatGPT, but in some ways it's um, it's giving a wrong message to designers in that it's a black box. So you have a large language model and you give it a prompt, and it's going to give you something back that's pretty directional, pretty on target after that. But when you're developing something from scratch, an AI native application, first of all, you have to know, do you even have the data to do that kind of a thing? And once you do, then there's a lot of tuning involved in the product as it moves forward, right? So I'm guessing that as you started to step into the framework, that you saw some gotchas along the way.
Can you say more about the gotchas?
I mean that, for example, is the data clean? If you have this idea that you want to have a program for students, then, and that also does match to our AI Bootcamp case study, which is a pair of glasses that help students upload all their media and then their interests and interviews them, and then it begins to map out a career and also has the courses built in, and they're able to move forward. That's our case study for the boot camp. But
Okay.
as you started to get into AI native applications, there's some things that make the idea not doable. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think the quality of the output is very important. uh, yeah. What models are trained on, I think, can uh, really impact the quality. I think what you mentioned around tuning is how LLMs are trained is a difficult table to get a seat at. Tuning, however, um, I think is a more accessible space for design, and one where I think there's a lot of opportunity for designers to play a role. You know, you can fine tune an LLM on all kinds of narrowly defined parameters in order to try to impact uh, the quality or the type of output. So people have created full products just based on tuning. You know, they'll take a widely available LLM and tune it on legal documents to create a tool for law practice, or they'll tune it on medical literature to create a product for healthcare providers. So I think, design has a big role to play here because we are so tuned, haha, to the people that we're designing for and the users and what their kind of definitions of quality would be in an output. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for designers to make recommendations about the type of material that's used to tune for different use cases and users and situations.
Okay, well, that's one of the frameworks, influencing tech roadmaps that we had talked about earlier. I'm going to open it up to questions in a few minutes. If you have a question, just put it in chat. I want to make this as relevant as possible to the people in the room. But I'm going to ask you about the next AI framework that you mentioned, strategic friction. Tell me about that one.
Friction, yeah. Okay. By the way, if we can only do three and not four, I would love to skip the score one, the trust one. I feel like I'm still noodling on that one. It's not ready for prime time yet. Okay, so strategic friction. Friction is a tricky topic and it's kind of a dirty word in design, but I would like to posit the idea that there is good friction and bad friction. Um, so with I think it's important to remind ourselves that it's supposed to be a tool that solves problems and not a tool that creates new problems. And I've done a lot of research with people about AI. And I would say the single biggest universal concern across countries, age groups, levels of familiarity with the tools, like just across all of those segments, the biggest concern people have is that it's going to lead to the loss of critical thinking in people, that we're going to stop being able to think for ourselves and we're going to stop being able to tell what's true or what's real. So in like tech speak, I think preventing this kind of misuse or over reliance on AI is often solved by finding ways to quote unquote keep the human in the loop. If you've heard that term before, which means essentially don't just let the AI do all the thinking and do everything, but keep the human in the loop so that people are weighing in, making decisions, and thinking for themselves. And I think human in the loop is an example of positive friction, good friction, strategic friction. Um, Good friction builds trust, it builds engagement, it builds good technology habits. Bad friction is annoying and time consuming. So friction up until this point, I think friction in products has gotten a bad rap. A lot of businesses have like built their brand on this like frictionless experience. One click to buy or the endless scroll, those are all frictionless experiences that companies have like really anchored around. But AI is a different kind of technology and it needs to be treated differently. And I think this is where like UX and interaction design can like really shine. I think we need new UX patterns to help us build in positive friction. I think we see a lot of borrowed interfaces and borrowed patterns from social media and e-commerce in AI, and I think it can be very misleading. I think a very good example of that is the thumbs up, thumbs down pattern that's used, right? You get an output from AI, and there's this little thumbs up, thumbs down that you can click on. And this is used generally to train the AI, right? The mechanism for getting feedback on the quality of the output. Was it high quality? But people are used to the thumbs up connoting something that they like. Oh, look, I just got a thumbs up and doing that. Not something that's correct. So thumbs up means I like it. It doesn't mean this is correct. And so as a pattern in AI, this is like really, I would posit this is misunderstood and misused, and I don't know if I'm right, but maybe leading to like poor training of the models themselves. I think AI can be very convincing, and one of the biggest challenges in designing the products is making sure people aren't over relying on them and like imbuing the AI with power that it doesn't actually have, or like trusting the results too much. It can be wrong, it can be biased, it can lack nuance, it can just be sort of vaguely misleading and do all these things while sounding very legitimate. So I think, you know, interaction designers hopefully feel inspired to think about how to like build more positive friction into AI experiences. We've done some work on this at Smart and tried some good things. And I think a tip in like how to build in positive friction is to help users de-risk using AI, right? Like depending on their use case, but like give them a way to check if their image is accurate before they publish it to their marketing campaign, or like give them ways to ensure that they have learned the material that they're studying well enough that they can pass their quiz tomorrow. So I think positive friction in the end also needs to benefit the user, so they can use the AI while actively like avoiding any of these like negative outcomes or repercussions. And like ultimately, like what does this mean? It means they trust the tool, and it means they're using it in a way that helps them like build these healthy technology habits, which hopefully from social media we know how important lessons learned from social media. We know how important like habit building is around technology. But all that means that, you know, they're using AI kind of as an aid, but not as a thinking replacement for themselves.
So, what are some of the ways that you use to calibrate trust? Because obviously, if somebody trusts it too much, then they will make mistakes and they'll blame the AI for that. And if they don't trust it enough, they won't use it. And so, what are some of the ways to provide enough information that the trust is correct, but not so much friction that I just don't even want to be here anymore trying this?
I mean, I think trust is what the fourth one on the list. I took it down to three. uh, trust is an incredibly difficult thing to measure. Wait, was that your question around measurement?
I was just following up when you were talking about trust a minute ago and saying that you have to create this friction. And by friction, I guess, you know, when I think of friction, I think of like physics and I think of something that's making you lose your effort and your effort is there for nothing. But what I gather from what you're saying is that by friction, you mean that you're interacting more with people at a certain point than just automating everything. There's sort of an augmentation of the process, but not replacing the human action. So the human is still in the loop. I'm just wondering some ways, because it's also kind of annoying when you're like, this answer is 60% probable correct. Well, I'm not sure what to do with that. If it's a flight that I'm taking and it's a ticket that's on sale, that's not a big deal. But if it's a neurologist
Mhm.
looking at um, my brain scans, then the 60% might not be so great. So I'm just wondering, you know, what are some of the ways that designers have to indicate this friction is meant for a positive end?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think in a lot of the examples that you just provided, they're dead ends, right? It's like you asked the AI question, the question gave you, or the AI gave you an answer, and then it also told you that its answer might not be correct. And then it doesn't help you any more than that.
Yeah, it's a
Although
little.
I guess in some cases now they started providing links, but the click-through rate on the links is like abysmally low. Uh, so like a principle that we've set for ourselves is no dead end, right? It's like it's not about like stopping the user in their track. That's not positive friction. That's negative friction. That's bad friction. But it's giving them the tools to keep going with thoughtfulness.
Okay. Let's talk about one of the other AI frameworks, anti-use cases. Tell me about that one.
Anti-use cases. There is a question you provide me with a list of questions that I guess you're often asked. Um, and one of them was what kinds of tasks are done well by AI and which ones not so much. And I think this is a wonderful, wonderful question. And I really appreciate this question because there are tasks that AI just should not do. And it's not because it can't do it, it's because these are the things that people value doing themselves. Um, this one, I think the lens of, or the field of creativity is a really helpful frame to apply to the idea of anti-use cases. I've done a lot of work over the years with people who are creative professionals, or artists even, to kind of understand where is AI helpful and where does it just feel the magic. Um, you know, many people believe that AI is like a productivity enhancer and its goal, or we should think of it as a tool or an assistant in taking away annoying and time-consuming tasks, the things that keep us from the things that we find meaningful. Um, and I think what we see, an area where it's gaining a lot of traction is in creative fields, where you can use AI now in video production, animation, really effective. The voice acting market. I think like it's not a secret that the creative community is not feeling very positive about AI, and that's understandable. People have aspired to work in these professions. They love the craft. It's something they've loved doing since they were young. They dreamed of it. Um, so if you're thinking, if you take the case study of you're a company wanting to make AI an AI enabled experience or a tool for people in creative fields, I think it's important to know what your anti use cases are. Know as much what not to do as much of what to do. So identify the right specific creative workflow problems and don't create existentially threatening problems. And if you get it right, creatives, but I think this is true for any market segment that you might have carved out for yourself, will love you because people love to feel like their tools get them, right? It's a very unique feeling when you use something and you're like, oh, they get it, whoever they are. And I think in AI, this often means understanding what's off limits and also the counterpoint to that, what's helpful and what's fair game. And the design process applied here as it would anywhere. You have to go get close to your users, right? Go get close to these creators, deeply understand their process, and through that, you really identify where AI is helpful and where really know where the anti-use cases are. We have like this big icon that we use, and when we create like workflows and journey maps, like these are like the big X, like out of bounds. Don't touch this. Every creative field is different, but there definitely are commonalities, and I think it's basically the commonality is help with the unsexy stuff, but don't automate the things that they love. And I think that what you get in exchanging loyalty, AI tools now there's so many, and almost no one has figured out how to monetize. There are a couple exceptions there, but they're quite few. And at some point, users are going to need to pick and choose which tools they want to pay for when these tools stop being free. And if you've been able to demonstrate to them that you get them, that you value the same things that they do, I think this is the point at which, when they're choosing which of the tools they want to subscribe to, they subscribe to yours, and the loyalty pays off.
Okay. Hey, I'm looking in chat. If you have a question, if you're in the Zoom meeting, then put it in chat. If you're in the LinkedIn Live, you can put it there. And Valerio, who's on the Strat team, will put it into the chat here. Have there been any, like, I think what some people might be facing in their companies is they've been told, put ChatGPT in basically everything. But as they start to look at other customer problems that can be solved with AI, um, it might be difficult to imagine what the anti-use cases are or which ones to gravitate towards. Like, let's say I work for some e-commerce website and I want to help my customers. I did a lot of work in home improvement and also in financial services. Let's say I want to help them develop their own personal plan for the home improvement or for the financial services. What am I looking for as I'm looking for the anti-use cases versus the use cases as I start to evaluate, should we give people a tool to envision future renovations? Should we give them a tool to kind of model their finances? Uh, what am I looking for when I'm trying to decide the anti-use cases from the use cases?
I think you're trying to understand where they have friction that's annoying, where there's things that they have to do that are um, repetitive or time consuming or not enjoyable, um, and eliminate those from where they're garnering meaning or pleasure. I think within any one of those opportunities you just described, there's probably some tasks that are inbounds and out of bounds, right? It's not that the whole use case is out of bounds per se, but it's sort of within it. There's certain, there's like, yeah, there's like subtasks that people would want AI support with and would feel um affronted, I guess, if AI tried to do.
Okay, well, I have a comment question from Matthew. We observed that while our clients are asking for their own AI tools, they're not at the level of digital maturity to achieve them. So usually we have to step further digital transformation before we can get there. Things like content modeling, taxonomy work, and systems integration. So an observation. Does that resonate with your experience, Jamie?
It took me a minute to open up the chat window about it.
There's more work to do before they can get to that point.
I think that makes sense. It's not my personal experience, but I can imagine this scenario. I'm curious how you get them that to understand that that's what they need. People come to you with a brief and then you do a little bit of digging and you come to understand that like the real need is not what's on the brief. Like, do you have ways of bringing them along with that thought process? Workshop. Workshops are good for building alignment. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Jamie, let me ask you this. We've been kind of top down so far, talking about like looking almost like from a bird's eye view and then coming into the project. When you go into a day of work where there's going to be you're working with data scientists, let's say, on a product, what does that look like specifically on your computer monitor? What program, do you have like a Python window open or, Replit, or what does your day look like when it's going to be collaborating more extensively on, looking at the AI models and data and training, et cetera? What does it look like specifically in terms of tools?
On the top of the workshop and how we collaborate with, across function. It's mostly like digital whiteboard, to be honest. Our role often entails um, communicating in a compelling and succinct way what people need and desire, and how a technology that they're interacting with can and should behave in order uh, to align with their motivations or expectations. The how exactly it's done in Python uh, is not an area that we trespass into. I think it's more sort of our role is like really building um, an understanding of what we're trying to accomplish through the data, not not how exactly to do it within the data.
Okay, I'm still trying to get to some sort of a um, perspective on what your day-to-day looks like as you forage into the AI arena, because a lot of the things that we're talking about have been around for a long time, and the methods have been around for a long time. I'm just wondering, given that people are on a learning curve and they're trying to understand what they should study next or what kinds of tools might help them to find these things, I'm just wondering if there's any more specific processes or kind of, again, just sort of on the screen in the day, kind of time consuming things that you've learned as you've progressed into this area? Or has it mainly been envisioning and kind of designing an experience, and then the technical team goes and designs that thing? Is that more how it works?
Oh yeah, if you talk to John, who's our technology director, and maybe you should, maybe I should make a introduction. He might be able to tell you like what tools you're using on the technology team and how those have changed. On the insights and strategy and design team, um, I think what we've had to do is understand more about how the AI work, how the technology works, so that we can make recommendations that feel actionable. But we are, yeah, we're not telling people how to write their code
Sure.
specifically.
When you say tuning, um, that's an example of kind of getting into more of how the actual model works. What's involved in tuning?
Oh, it's tuning is sort of like a subset of training. So you train the model at large, and then you can like attune it to another data set, usually like a smaller and more specific data set. If there's, I mean, I guess one thing, there's a couple of like technical areas that I feel design has a lot of potential to influence, um, without having, to know literally how to build an LLM yourself or tune or yeah, or how to technically tune it. Uh, the tuning is one. I think like memory is another. So uh, the new models that are coming out have the ability to remember things about you, and that's new. It's not brand new for technology in general. Like obviously algorithms do this, right? Your Instagram account remembers what content you engaged with, how long, what actions you took, etc. And like it remembered that, and the idea is that it can create a more personalized experience for you. I think it's really interesting, designers, if you're looking to extend past the interface, to really be designing the kinds of signals that an AI can and should be looking out for, so that it can like learn about people in the right way. And the signals definition fall into two categories: there's explicit and implicit signals, right? Like an explicit signal is like, oh, you're asking ChatGPT a lot about your trip to Athens. That's a pretty explicit signal of you planning a trip to Athens. Implicit is like how you're seeming, like, oh, you're seeming stressed out about it. And what would be a signal of that, right? What would be a signal of your emotional state or your psychological state? Um, I feel like this is a very good area for people who have experience in human-centered design to play a role. I think, we are in some ways advocates for users, and I think we would develop really good frameworks for these implicit and explicit signals, like what they should be. And I think I'm for like a broken record with this, but it's like what they should be and what they shouldn't be. It's like what are like the inbounds and out of bounds? What are the things that feel really off limits, that people would feel like this is a no violation of privacy if this is the signal that's being gathered? So that's one. And then there's another area that I think design can play a big role in the technology, which is like the interstitial layer. Um, I'll explain. So from what I understand about how AI works, you enter a prompt, like a query, right? You ask a question, but that doesn't go directly to the AI. There's kind of a layer in between like the user interface where you input and the AI itself. Hold on one sec. That's helping basically like translate your query into a better AI prompt. So the interstitial layer, the purpose of it is to like interpret what it is that you really want, which might not be the same as what you've actually written verbatim in your prompt, and put that into terms that the AI will be able to deliver what it thinks is the best result given what the interstitial layer thinks you really want. So it's like kind of like rewriting your prompt for you. And I think there's a lot of value for design-minded people here. Um, Writing is very hard. It's not really always the best way to communicate your intent or your goals. And like the research that we've done around this, almost everyone struggles with prompt writing. They think everyone, no matter how experienced they are with AI, thinks they're not good at writing prompts. And it's interesting because like right now, the like all the responsibility is put on the user to figure out how to like talk AI better. But I think there's a lot of room to explore other ways to input what you want. Um, and also define, right, be that layer of translation of like, how do you know what they meant based on what they said or the other signals that they're able to give you in that sort of translation layer, interpreting people's intent before it gets down into the AI. So I think that interstitial layer is like a really rich territory for design.
Well, I'm looking at chat, guys. If you have a question for Jamie, put it in chat. Jamie, I'm wondering if you have any advice for people that haven't begun their journey yet into AI. They've used ChatGPT or Gemini or Bing or whatever it's going to be, Copilot, but haven't yet started working on any customer-facing or employee-facing projects yet. What kind of reading would you recommend in general to people, or resources would you recommend to people in general who want to figure out what their next steps are?
Great question. Um, I mean, I think it does help to understand how the tech works, and you use the same terms that the tech team is using to describe what your recommendations are, right? So that's just sort of, yeah, read papers on these how the AI systems work and become familiar with the terminology. Um, I think there's so many models out there that are available to you as an API that maybe just try making something. Just try making something small using one of the plugins, right? And I think it'll tune you into some of the opportunities, problems to solve as it relates to the interface side of things. And I think it'll also give you a head start on like how to think about designing the output as well. I think as designers, we've been very oriented around the input moment. Of the output moment, we feel like we don't know enough to have a seat at that table. Um, Take that little voice on your shoulder and tell it to shut up. Read the papers about how AI works. And then think of, yeah, like, I don't know, try your hand at like making recommendations for the output side as well, based on what you've learned from how AI works.
Excellent. Well, Jamie, I appreciate you being with us today. We have an AI product design bootcamp coming up in San Francisco. It's also available remote. And we have these Friday lunch and learns. So I hope you'll continue to join us. We'll post Jamie's video early next week on the AI plus UX LinkedIn group. But thanks for tuning in today. And Jamie, thanks also for being with us here today.
My pleasure. Have a great Friday.